without context.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to both 2023 and the first episode of the Without Context podcast of 2023.
Of the year.
I am...
You gave them context. What are you doing?
I am one of your co-hosts, as usual, Decavolty. I am joined by SharkyHat, of course, and we've got Fannon back. If you remember our episode on, we're just kind of shooting the breeze about game dev theory. Well, we have them back, and they had a fancy new trailer that we all kind of watched together just now.
Yeah, and for some clarification, if you all do remember that past video, the name was Run Rabbit Dev, one of those things, and I think we had Aidan as the title of the episode. So this is the same individual, and they're back because, as Deca said, they did drop their company dropped a trailer recently that we're excited to talk about. So
cat's out of the bag, baby.
When you kept secret.
Yeah, when we worked with you on the previous episode, I can't remember if we asked it. You joined Gunfire Games after Remnant 1 was released, right? So
Remnant was released in, I believe, 2019, and Remnant 2 was just announced at the end of 2022. So we've been working on it for, I think, 2.5-ish years now.
Yeah, is this your first trailer that has dropped for the company that you've worked for? So
yeah, this is it was a big moment for me because this is the first wide release trailer that I've been involved in, because I've done live streams and things like that in the past through Haunted PS1. I was involved in Eek 3 for a couple of years, and so I've done live streams and things like that before, but jumping straight from a couple thousand people to main show at the Game Awards was kind of a big jump. So it's definitely been a whole bunch of new experiences for me. It's awesome.
There's the small ones for hundreds of people, and then there's the one shown for hundreds of thousands. There's no middle ground in there. There's only a few or a ton.
It's definitely a wild experience because it's neat being part of specialty shows and things like that, but it's crazy to just go on Twitter and see the name of something that you're working on trending without you even knowing about it, and without having to search it or anything. It's oh, there it is. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I can only imagine the emotions that came out when that trailer was released, because you're this is what I've been working on for so long, and finally it's getting to the point where it's about to be finished and come out, and that hard work's gonna pay off. And
oh yeah, I was biting my finger the whole week, coming up to release, and I'm trying to be hey, you should watch the Game Awards for no reason.
At all.
Just watch the Game Awards between 8:33 and 8:45 p.m. on this particular day. For legal reasons, for absolutely no reason at all. Just
I'm not telling you what it is. I'm just telling you when it is.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just telling you, you should be watching. You should be watching,
yeah. Just watch.
It looks great. I mean, for people who haven't played the first Remnant, it's a fantastic game. The story isn't anything that you'd expect, especially with what the story does and where it goes, both literally and figuratively. So I'm excited to see if that kind of core concept is back in Remnant 2. I know we can't talk about the game, and we agreed to not talk about the game. We're not going to bully you on a podcast for information.
Not yet.
When the game drops. What is the release? Oh, is that out yet? No,
so it's I don't know how specific the release date has gotten, but it is coming soon.
2 p.m. Got it.
Yeah.
I don't think we actually have a set release date yet, but I'm just double checking
as of the Game Awards. So
I'm just doing my due diligence as
yeah.
It's just this year.
Yeah, this year.
So.
Cool. Soon TM.
But yeah, it's been really rewarding to work on a project with people who care so much about the end goal and are really invested artistically in what we're working on, because the first Remnant game, like at least from what I know about it, because I never actually got to like work on it. A lot of it has been inspired by like creative work and specifically creative formats that people at the studio liked. So it was really funny for me, and one of the things that made me want to go to Gunfire and like work on their games is how much the backstory to Remnant, like the original game, is almost formatted like an SCP. It's just really interesting to me because it's you see all these games that are like leaving lore throughout the world and stuff, but it usually feels like it's like, oh, okay, well, here's the story dump. But with Remnant in particular, I remember myself, like, as I was playing it, really feeling like the things that were being described had actually happened in the place that I was exploring. And I just remember thinking that was like a really cool thing. And it just made me want to work on the game even more. So
yeah, I think that's the one word that can describe Remnant is variety. I mean, we'll go into spoiler territory. It's going to be kind of a boring like talk about it. So if you haven't played Remnant 1, which you should do, I definitely do it. What caught me is like when I see Remnant gameplay and I'm like, okay, this is like a Dark Souls game. I see the worlds in the situation it's in. I see, the route and everything. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to be going through like different cities and stuff like that, or different city areas. And then it's just like, nah, man, we're going interdimensional. There's
Space, baby.
It's like, there's going to be multiple dimensions, multiple worlds, and a bunch of different enemy types. And I'm like, okay, hold up a second. You're doing what to me right now?
Yeah, it's funny. You can tell how much of Remnant somebody has played, like based on when you say the word planet hopping, they go, wait, what?
Yeah.
Because I remember I was watching a bunch of reviews for the game, right before I started working at Gunfire, and one of the things that struck me is like, oh, the game all looks the same. Oh, the game. It's like, okay, that person didn't make it through Earth.
That person played 2 hours and
exactly.
stopped.
and like that's valid. I just like feel like so many people missed out on the meat of the game because they thought the whole thing was just going to be like, busted up streets for like hours and hours. And it's like, no, there's so much more to it than that. I don't know.
And it's incredible because it all has a like common link to it, which is why these worlds are connected in a way. And they're all kind of dealing with the same situation. And from the trailer of 2, it looks like that's going to be a very similar experience. And we were talking about it before the podcast, and I'm like, I'm noticing like certain artistic choices that are other games. Like there's very obviously like, this looks very Soulsborne to me.
I mean, you got to pull your inspiration from somewhere, to be fair. I came into the studio after the kind of concepting process had already ended, so I can't really speak to how much of the game was influenced by other games. But as a designer, I personally find myself pulling from a lot of other work that I really like. For reference, I do most of the player arsenal. So a majority of my job is working on things like guns and like weapon attachments and like player kit, items, things like that. So, for me personally, I find myself going into other games, especially shooters, trying to figure out not only what I like about, how the weapons feel, how the movement feels, things like that, but why I like it. So that on a more conceptual level, I can kind of try and apply that to, every implementation that I do to make sure that it at least has something that I like. And if it has something that I like, there's probably something for everybody. So.
Did we see any of your work in the trailer?
I think there's like 3 frames. There's like one weapon that I got to work on that made it into the trailer. But outside of that, a lot of it was standard loadout stuff, nothing too fancy. But there's
there I am.
More to come.
Yeah, it's just I can imagine you sitting on the couch watching the trailer and it's just the Leo pointing meme, like when you see something you worked on.
I have and the soy jack.
Yeah, the soy jack. I love that meme picture. It's just one of those things.
I have a tangential anecdote because Fannon and I and like a handful of us were in voice chat when we were watching the Game Awards, and one of the ongoing jokes was like, "Hey, is that your game?" And they're just like, "Yes," and it's like Mortal Kombat or something. Very much not their game.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I was like, let's have a watch party. And they were like, oh, is your game getting announced? And I'm like, no.
And I'm not gonna lie, I came in with zero, like, baseline zero. I was like, oh, they've got like, I don't know, some like indie style game coming out. The bright pixely indie style, certified indie style.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, cool. They got something coming out, and I'm gonna support the homies. But I came out of that legitimately impressed and excited to see what's coming next. It's one of those, I don't go here, but that's cool as fuck.
Yeah, I remember that was one of the things that was really exciting for me was getting messages from all of my friends on Facebook who had been like, "Oh, hey, you're working at Gunfire, right? I loved Remnant. That's crazy. It's like one of my favorite games." And then like Remnant 2 getting announced and me posting the logo on Facebook after the trailer dropped and just being like, "Yo!" and getting a message from like every single one of those people being like, "Oh my god, what can I see? When is it coming out?" And I'm like, "I can't tell you anything. I'm sorry." But yeah, I honestly think that that's the worst part of being a designer.
Because you love this game and you want to talk about it, but at the same time,
exactly,
you're legally unable to.
I have 15 brain cells and all of them are in Remnant hell is what it comes down to. But
yeah,
it's just been it's been really interesting for me. Just only having the body of work that I did in indie before I started, before I like went professional. To talk about in advance, of Remnant coming out, because all of the stuff that I made before I got into the industry was so radically different from what I'm doing now. It's funny, Remnant is actually the first game that I've worked on that had any kind of combat system, and pretty much all I do is make weapons. Yeah. So it's just been really interesting kind of being able to like build a skill set from the ground up and really just like find myself settling into a role. The problem is I can't really use my old work as an example in terms of like showing people what I do, because it's like depressing narrative horror walking simulator, depressing narrative horror walking simulator, ghost photography game, third person shooter Souls-like.
Yeah, it's just like here's my body of work. Here's what I want to do. I am not qualified. Like I want to work on your weapons. As you can see by my body of work, I am unqualified. Please hire me.
Pretty much. Well, that's the cool thing about being a technical designer is my job description is essentially to not have a job description. And at least at most companies, what a technical designer kind of does is like hop around from team to team and do like tasks here and there that might be a little bit too complicated for somebody who has like less specific technical scripting knowledge. I just lucked out because I managed to get into the single junior role that allowed me to specialize as a technical designer. So nice. at least until Remnant ships, where I'm probably just going to be doing like player arsenal weapon stuff, and I love it. Honestly, I love what I do.
It's a good bag to be in. Like especially for us, rogue, a Souls like, that's like, it's going to be one of the spots where players are going to be the most opinionated about. Besides, like, whatever mechanics there are, is like, oh man, I there's going to be someone who's like uses the weirdest weapon and is going to like have that YouTube, or like, yeah, I did nothing but dodge roll, use this one shitty weapon.
I mean, look at Souls-like brings out the most creative in players. I mean,
yeah.
Well, that's the nice thing about, the format and things like that. At least historically, I know like one of the major complaints with Remnant was that it was just really, really hard.
Yeah.
And while I do agree with that to some extent, I've definitely had my fair share of like difficult moments with the game. Like the difficulty curve's pretty intense. But I feel like that kind of does, you're right. It really does bring out the best in players. And that's like one of the things that I'm most excited for when the game comes out, is just seeing the way that people take the things that I've gotten to work on so far and just like combine them in ways I wasn't expecting at all, to just completely like sweep the challenges that we've set up, just because it's like, I don't know. I have a pretty solid idea of like what's going to go with what, when the game comes out. But I know for sure that there's going to be, people with like spreadsheets.
Yeah.
who are just, like running math in the like shooting arena or whatever, just trying to like, maximize values and things like that. And I want to see the idea of like watching people kind of slowly figure that stuff out is just going to be so rewarding when the game comes out.
On that topic, my friends and I played GTFO on Monday. It was my first time playing the game, and I was just like looking up stuff for it and everything, and I saw those spreadsheets. It was like how to kill this enemy with, here's the damage that every weapon does to it. And it's like the spreadsheet is like the tier list, and it's like, who has time for this? Like, it's just one of those things. I was like, who does this? They're honestly doing God's work, but
yeah, no, I don't know where like RPG communities would be without those kinds of people. Like people who are able to, reverse engineer stuff just by like screwing around with it in game. That's like insane to me. I have enough trouble engineering it the right way around. So that's just, it's wild to me that people are this committed to like, creative projects. And I think that's going to be like a really rewarding thing when the game comes out. It's like, connecting with those kinds of people, because I that's like my tribe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what we know what your response is from your friends, because I was there when in the trailer when the trailer dropped. What has the general like random person on Twitter experience been like so far since the trailer dropped and moving forward?
Well, first of all, thank y'all for that. That really did mean the world to me, by the way.
Yeah.
But
we're all like, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. What's going on?
I love that. But yeah, the public response has been mind blowing. I think we're at almost, if not a little bit past 5 million views on the official account's trailers, not even including the other, repostings of it. And people seem so excited. I'm seeing, I spent the whole night of the Game Awards just scrolling through the like hashtag Game Awards, like the hashtag thread. And, I just kept seeing like, I'm really excited for like Armored Core and Remnant 2. And I'm like, yeah. And then, I'm saying, Hades 2 and Remnant 2, the sequel time. And I'm like, yeah. Just getting to see, how many people were excited for not only for the game, but like, we're mentioning it in the same breath as something like a new Armored Core game or a sequel to Hades or whatever. It's just not something that I was expecting, but something that I was incredibly like, pleasantly surprised by. I know a lot of people have played the first one, and I know like, a majority of people who have played it, like to any extent, have really, really enjoyed it. So, but just seeing like, I think I saw like 3 tweets that weren't like, people like chomping at the bit for the game. So that was really, really exciting for me as like a first time major release.
Looking at the Game Award trailers, it's just finally some good fucking sequels. Like,
yeah, this is a good year for sequels, honestly.
But again, we can't like talk about the actual game itself and everything, but I think that what I liked about Remnant, which is something that is different from a lot of Souls games to an extent, is the 3-man team that you could potentially have, like the multiplayer side of it and everything. So I think that difficulty curve is there with the exception that it's going to be a co-op thing going into it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. It's sorry, this is like an important Souls-like design philosophy moment. Yeah. The reason that the difficulty curve feels so different, or at least like from my kind of understanding of it, is that it all has to do with the fact that it's ranged combat. You think of like a melee system, and you're a guy with one sword, right? Yeah. It might be a big sword, but then it's going to go slow, right? But there's, so if I'm using a sword and you're using a sword, we both have to be like, this far from each other to hit each other. But there's no way for a guy with a sword to deal with 3 guys who are all 30 feet away from him with a shotgun. You know what I mean? So it's been interesting to see the ways that the actual game has had to become harder than something that would be, potentially like just like a melee only game, or at least something that's melee focused. specifically because it has to account for the players being all over the place and doing 3 different things at once. So yeah, like adding in the ranged element of like, like things like guns has completely changed the philosophy around difficulty in particular. And I think that that's something that like Remnant really has going for it in terms of like a hardcore experience.
Yeah, and I can see that in the design of some of the boss levels. If you just had a player situated on different spots of the room, if that boss wasn't spawning in the minions like it does, then it's just two people picking it off while one person's running around in circles trying not to, get hit by it.
Yeah, you've got one dude with aggro boost with just like a giant crowd of enemies chasing after him with pitchforks.
You just have two guys. Just two guys sitting back with repeater rifles just pinging away at it.
There you go.
That's kind of how MMORPGs have been going since like before World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, you got tank stats and you got DPS.
Exactly, but I think that there's a lot more kind of opportunities for roles in a party in Remnant than there would be in something like Dark Souls, because with Dark Souls you have to build your character for solo primarily, at least, just because the game is a little bit more focused on that. But if you're going into it with a team setting, like you're playing with 2 of your buddies, your friend always likes to play medic, you like to play range, and your buddy likes shotguns. It's like a little bit, you almost have to have like a solo character and like a co-op character if you really want to get the most out of your build, I feel like. And I think that's something that the Souls series generally don't have, because it's just 3 dudes hacking away at a big guy, for the most part when it comes to like boss fights and stuff. That's like a gross oversimplification, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely can see that. I can definitely see that being like why the curve is as it is, because it's just, if you had 3 guys going in with submachine guns, these enemies are, a normal group of enemies is just going to go down. So it's like, oh look, we have our fodder, we have a few of the big guys, we have some flying like aerial opponents, and everybody has to kind of divvy up what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like almost calling it a Souls-like does a disservice to the game, because it's just so fundamentally different. Yeah, it has a dodge roll with iframes. It's really hard, and there's consumables. There's a poison swamp in the first one, I guess. But outside of that, in terms of like the moment-to-moment gameplay, I feel like it's a lot more distinct from a Souls-like than your average, I guess, Souls-like would be, because it's kind of like a weird nebulous term.
Yeah, I think it'd be more like, I would say probably not even like giving it, like the shortened title. It's more of like just a third person like shooting role playing game, like a
that's what I usually say.
Squad,
is like
squad based role playing.
Yeah, squad based like third person ARPG shooter.
Starting to make it sound like more like Destiny then.
Yeah, there's a lot of Destiny talk. It's I would argue that it's almost closer to like, yeah, it's almost like throwing the characters from Destiny into a Dark Souls game. I guess. Yeah. It's hard. It's so hard to explain, because the enemies, the enemy behavior in Remnant is also so different. I feel like just because you get like a lot more varied enemies, just because it's not games as a service, and you don't, the goal is to essentially polish each moment rather than trying to be able to create. I guess it's just like a different set of priorities, I feel like, in terms of like the experience. But I feel like Remnant is a smaller package with enemies that are a little bit more varied, whereas something that's planning on having like a continued life cycle would design its enemies differently to be able to kind of fit into like more environments and things like that, just so you can build like raid dungeons and things like that where you'll see a lot of the same enemies, I guess.
Yeah, Remnant is like a complete meal, where like games as service are like fast food. You can pick it up when you want it, but you don't have to eat it all the time. It's just like, hey, I want to play some Destiny, but it's like with Remnant you can be like, pick it up, finish it, good, you got a A to B experience. The story in itself in that game is wrapped up. You've had hours of gameplay that haven't been repetitive in the sense that like a Destiny game would be repetitive. So
it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's kind of a philosophy that I've come to recently, just because I started playing Fortnite recently with a group of my friends, just because I had 2 weeks off from work. I'd been wanting to try it. I just taught myself to surf in CS:GO and played Fortnite for that whole break. It was awesome. But yeah, it's so interesting for me because I've generally really not enjoyed multiplayer games in the past. I used to play a lot of League of Legends.
Sorry for the loss.
Yeah, I know. I got to the point where I was only playing support because the people that I was playing with were like, anytime I took like any amount of kills or anything, they'd like yell at me. So I only played support, and I played so much that I think I gained like 60 pounds that summer because all I was doing was like waking up, playing League of Legends, and falling back asleep. But I got really good at it. I could solo bot lane with Thresh before the rework, so I was pretty proud of that. But yeah, I always I think I just used to play multiplayer games with people who were like more focused on winning. Whereas the people I've been playing Fortnite with, I'm finding that I'm just not really caring about how we place and just kind of having fun, murdering people on the way to the center of the circle. And I'm like, I'm never going to be as good as these kids who are like, off from school or whatever and are, spending their whole day playing Fortnite. So like, why would I get upset when I don't win? And I think that mentality in particular is something that's made me enjoy multiplayer games a lot more. But I would agree. It's kind of just like, it's like fast food, but like not in a disparaging way. Like it's just like, it's good fun, and then you can put it down and you're done. And I think that's like a really valuable thing, especially for people who don't have like time to sit down and play a video game or whatever.
So there are like sit down restaurants where like quality inconsistent, you're not sure what you're getting, but when you're in the mood for like, and this is hashtag not an ad, when you're in the mood for like McDonald's, you know what you're getting when you go to McDonald's. You know you're getting, a crushed patty, cheese, all that and all of that stuff. I'm fucking hungry now.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, it's like it's hard to stop at Olive Garden on your way to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard to find the time.
Damn it.
It's hard to find the time to sit down and complete a game that, even though it has a definitive end, it's like you still got to sink hours into it. Games like God of War or Horizon or Witcher 3, those games have, double digits of hours to them. When Destiny, it's like, okay, you can play it for a few hours every now and then. Sure, by the end of the current season, you're not going to be anywhere near the power level to do the, end game stuff for that season, but you can still play it to your, liking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that, a lot of people miss out on, and who are maybe not as like, I don't even know what word to use, but it's hard to hit your head against a wall in a harder game than it would be to just like play a couple of rounds and just, maybe get some wins or whatever. But, if you only have like 2 hours a day to play a game, are you going to like bash your head against a wall about, a boss that you can't beat in some game that you're playing by yourself? Or are you going to go hang out with your friends for a couple hours, just like, shoot some other guys and just like, talk about whatever. So I really do think it's like just kind of I used to view those all as one experience, and I thought that's why I didn't like multiplayer games. But I don't know. I've just been thinking about it a lot lately.
You just want to hang around with bitter people.
Yeah, it's just nice to have like a good experience at this point and like actually have a multiplayer. I'm probably actually going to play Fortnite when I hop off this call. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like it's like a nice excuse to like see friends I wouldn't be hanging out with otherwise. So
add Fannon on Epic Games right now.
Hey,
yeah, that's what
should have got a creator code set up. Damn.
Yeah, see, I'm in like the weird like crossroads of those two mindsets because my friends and I played a lot of Destiny 2, but over time like they've dropped out of it and I kept playing. So I'm playing Destiny 2 by myself or with randoms whenever like it has a matchmaking mode. And I'm doing that, days on end because I want to do like the end game stuff. I want to hit that, power cap for the season, do the end game stuff, get all the completions for the season, etc. But it's just like, is this really worth me playing by myself for 2 to 3 hours, like every day, running the same activities each week because of resets? Like, is me doing the same thing every week in the same order with randoms most of the time? Like, it's just, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to play Destiny 2. I'm going to get into GTFO. And then after like 3 hours of gameplay on Monday, I'm like, these sessions are long and they are difficult. Like,
yeah, I think that's been one of the kind of interesting things about I'll stop talking about Fortnite at some point, but I think that's one of the things that hooked me in was the fact that like, I've never been able to like get into MMOs personally. I've never had the attention span for it. My ADHD is real bad. But I think that's one of the neat things about Fortnite is there's no real like permanent loss if you like don't play. For example, like, you get like League of Legends has masteries, Destiny has like, the loot grind and stuff like that. But, just being able to pick up something that's round based, and the only thing I miss out if I'm not playing is like an extra like color for my Doom Guy skin. I feel like that's like, it's making me want to play rather than having to play to keep up.
Yeah, Destiny has
I think that, like, power creep is what drove me crazy about all these games historically.
Yeah, Destiny definitely has that. Bungie has been trying to alleviate it by making, seasons. They'll end for like the focus and then the next season will come in, but the activities from that previous season will still be available for you to do the triumphs and everything. But it doesn't fix that fear of missing out, that FOMO each season, because once that season ends, if you didn't get that weapon for like, a rank reset in PvP or something, because you can get a weapon each season if you reset one of your 3 ranks there. If you don't do that season, you can't get that weapon. So like you have to play enough that season to at least reset. And it's like, this is still missing out. Like, just let me have this for a year. Like, let me take my time over a year, get these 4 weapons, and then you can drop your big ass content drop and I'll be ready to go. Like,
yeah, I feel that. I kind of feel like this all falls under the like Dan Olsen concept of line goes up. And it like I feel like I can't keep up with games that are line goes up. Like, I see why people like them. It's just not for me personally. Just because like, if the line stops going up, I stop enjoying it. Whereas, if it's just like a, play and then stop whenever I feel like it, that's definitely like, that's how it works best for me anyway. And that's how I manage to spend the least amount of money, which I think is why people don't do it that often.
You know what game is really good about like, you're gonna, it has a pass obviously, but you like you said, it's just cosmetic stuff and that's fine. Marvel Snap actually is really like, the rounds are like a minute and you're done and you go to the next one if you want to and you're done after like a minute. You stop playing it. Stuff like Marvel Snap or like even League's TFT. They're just, it's the auto chess, the card games, the very fast paced ones.
Wait, are you talking about Ruin King?
No. TFT is their auto battler.
Oh, got it. Okay, got it.
But like stuff like TFT, stuff like TFT's hyper roll in particular, because I know a regular like TFT game will take upwards of like 20 minutes. But TFT hyper roll is like 10 at most.
Nice.
And then Marvel Snap, the games are at most a minute and a half each game, each card battle.
Yeah.
And I feel like that format works really well for mobile in particular, just because like if you're on your phone playing a game, you're probably like waiting at a doctor's office or whatever, and you only need like 5 minutes of gameplay. So I feel like those like short rounds work really well for that. But that was one of the things that drove me crazy about League of Legends was the fact that like, rounds would unpredictably be either 30 minutes long or 2 hours. And I'm like, well, my parents are going to ask me to get up and do something. I live on my own now. I can play as many video games as I want. Yeah. No, I feel that. It was always, why can't you get off the game? And it's like, there's 4 other people. I can't leave them. They're going to lose. Yeah, that drove me crazy.
Playing more of my PS2 again since I finally got all the stuff needed to hook it up to my capture card. I can finally get back to.
That must have been a hunt.
Well, I had the PS2 for a while. I don't think I've told this. I think I told the story on the podcast once where I accidentally guilt tripped myself into buying a PS2 because I didn't.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know when we had a local retro store, and I didn't know that they closed at 9 o'clock. for some reason. It was like a Saturday night or a Friday night. I thought they'd be open a little bit later, or it might have been 8 o'clock or something. But I showed up like 10 minutes prior to closing, and I was like, oh shit, I wanted to like come in and kill time and stuff like that, and then, you know, go home. So I'm just looking around and I see them like kind of just standing around, and it's like, okay, what do they never have when I come in here? They never have the flat PS2 with like the top loader with an actual controller. It's always like a third party one. So I'm like, hey, you guys have a like a slim PS2 with a original controller? Yeah, man, we have one right here. We just got it in a few days ago, and it's like a nice silver one. And I'm like, oh, shit. So then I go like,
now I have to
I go and like find some games, and I'm like, yeah, man, I like to pick that up.
I love that.
But I picked up a converter to HDMI and everything, and so I was seeing if that could hook up, because I want to play some old games again, because a lot of modern games aren't doing it for me anymore.
I feel that. I played Katamari Reroll recently with my fiance, and it was like the most like blissful experience of my life. I'm sure I talked about this last time on the podcast, but Katamari is just like permanently top 3 games ever for me for whatever reason. And I was taking care of my fiance while she was sick over Christmas, and I ended up just playing all of Katamari Reroll, like Katamari Reroll, laying on a blow up mattress with her while she was just like passed out because she was so sick. And I'm like, hey, Katamari.
That's the remaster, right?
Yeah. It's got like the expansion of widescreen and fixed a bunch of the bugs. A lot less like weird PS2 texture artifacting nonsense. It looks really good. It's a lot more vibrant than it was on the original release and stuff.
Yeah, but like games like that, those deserve remasters or remakes.
Yeah.
I saw a thing a few days ago. I didn't check to see if it was valid or not, but they've announced the first Horizon is getting a remaster, and I'm like, that game came out like 5 years ago. Like, what do you mean? It still looks good. Like,
still hold up.
If you want to hear my cynical theory about that, I think that major game companies are a little nervous about putting out special editions anymore, because everybody used to clown on Skyrim for that, because it's been released on like 15 different consoles, and it's never like, you know, Skyrim remaster or whatever. It's always like Skyrim like Legendary Edition, Dragonborn Edition,
Your edition.
Goat Kicker Edition, like whatever, you know. But like, I feel like instead of doing like blah 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 edition and then just releasing it on the PlayStation 6 or whatever, they're starting to do like, you know, HD remaster, and it's like, it was already HD.
Yeah, because I
games
think
have been HD since the PS2. What are you talking about?
Yeah, because I think it's the first Horizon just being like natively released onto PS5, and I'm like, but didn't they give you the upgrade from PS4 version if you bought the PS5? Like, isn't that one of the games that had like the free upgrade? Like, it's just, I'm seeing stuff like that, and I'm like, I think it's just slapping remaster.
That's like,
yeah, Last of Us is getting remastered onto new consoles, and I'm like, it still looks better than games currently. What do you mean?
I will say, I think the reason for that, and this is kind of just a more general frustration with you know, the kind of rush to be hype, like you know, photorealistic or whatever, you know, like a lot of kind of higher end game engines are pushing right now to make things look as real as possible and have as, you know, many realistic simulations as possible, and this and that and the other. And it's like, I've always been of the opinion that stylized art doesn't age.
It doesn't.
And I think that in getting kind of obsessed with the process of making your game look as real as possible, a lot of like modern games have pigeonholed themselves into this spot where they're like, all right, well, this was the best looking game that had ever come out at the time, and now Unreal 5 is out and everything looks way better. So this game that was kind of marketed off of having like crazy graphics and really realistic reflections now looks like a PS2 game because, you know, the PS5 has like 3 times the rendering power or whatever. So, you know, I feel like a lot of kind of more realistic art style games tend to fall into this hole of needing to be, you know, remastered, remade, whatever, every couple of years, just because things look so much better now. You know, PS3 to PS4 was a jump. PS4 to PS5 was a jump. But like, I don't know, Dead Space still looks great.
I've replayed the first and second Dead Space recently, and sure, the facial
They look
animations,
fantastic.
the facial animations do kind of show their age, but like everything else in that game looks so good for what they made it in. And then you got a game recently on the same topic, like Callisto Protocol looks great and everything, and I like the idea of using real actors now as like video game characters. I definitely like that trend we're seeing, but at the same time, it's like they put all that effort into how it looks. The game ran like shit. Like,
I've heard mixed things about the Callisto Protocol, honestly. I'm very curious to play it, because my first two impressions of it were two people whose opinions I trust, one of whom said, this game sucks, it's the worst thing I've ever played. And the other one was just put up a clip of them giggling as they animation canceled through the like melee combat in the game. And that guy's opinion made me want to play it, but not take it take it more like an action horror game rather than a survival horror game.
From what I played of it, it does feel like that, because they've given you like not an active like dodge, but if like you hold the control sticks in a direction of the attack, you'll like dodge. So people have been going through and just like running through the game and hitting things like it's a speed run. But
yeah, that's what I keep hearing, is that it almost plays more like a brawler than like a survival horror game. And honestly, if you ask me, I feel like the kind of like, oh, it's Dead Space but better thing that the advertising campaign for the game was doing, like, almost might have done it a disservice. Yeah. It really drives me crazy when, marketing doesn't quite understand what the essence of a thing is, so they try to sell it to people as something else, and then when they get something that wasn't what it was kind of advertised to be, they're like disappointed rather than being like, oh, that was never the intention and it was supposed to be this other thing, and it's really good at being that thing, it's just not like how it was depicted, I guess.
In a movie sense, I think there was a lawsuit about the movie Drive that did that, is because the trailer for Drive made it seem like it'd be like a Fast and the Furious style like action movie, but the movie itself is like a more slower paced, like character driven like story. So this one lady like sued the studio for misleading her with the trailer.
It all comes back to Kangaroo Jack.
Oh no.
That trailer, the trailers for that movie destroyed me. I was so excited for like a wacky animated kangaroo adventure, because the entire trailer used the one scene where they like get hit over the head or drink cactus juice and hallucinate.
Yeah.
It's like a boner comedy heist movie. It's not even for kids. Like, why was this being advertised on Cartoon Network as a talking kangaroo movie? Because nobody would have watched it otherwise. But like, yeah. I don't know. I watched Kangaroo Jack, and I don't think I had ever felt disappointment like that. But like, if you had just told me like, oh yeah, they put a sweater on a kangaroo and he ran away, it's like, okay, that's a movie. It's just not the movie you're showing me, I guess.
Yeah. And I think the last God, I can't remember. I think it was Army of Two with the Devil's Cartel. The trailers for that like focused on the two bonus characters you got, which were two rappers that were like put into the game, like their character models and everything. And it's just like, that doesn't tell us anything about the game though. Like, they're just showing who you can get with it. Like,
exactly. I personally think we should be putting more rappers in third-person shooters. I miss the 50 Cent games for PS2.
They did hit.
In the sand.
No, they did hit. Like, for some dumb reason, those games actually did work for what they were.
Man, I don't know what it is with like tie-in games in general for the PS2 era, but like I think about the Spider-Man movie games like all the time. The Spider-Man games were ridiculous, and the X-Men movie games were always really, really good.
The Punisher had a tie-in game for PS2, and it was just like a really good like third-person shooter where you just brutalize criminals.
Oh, you know what? Which one was really, really good was the SpongeBob movie. because they like took all the tech from Battle for Bikini Bottom or whatever and just like made more of it. And like no one knows about this game, but it's so good. It's like everybody wanted a Battle for Bikini Bottom sequel, and it's like you already have one.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's held up because I played this when I was younger, but like I remember that game being like the coolest shit I'd ever experienced.
Going back to Army of Two, I'm gonna throw a suggestion. I want you to throw at your bosses, because for some reason even Army of Two stopped doing this mechanic after the first or second game, and I don't know why. When your teammate is down, you should be able to drag them and have them shoot and cover you. Like,
that is cool as hell. I do like stuff like that. I don't know why that's not in more games,
I think
honestly.
the first and second game did it. Like if one of your teammates went down, you could like pull them into cover, but they'd be sitting there like shooting as you pulled them. And the third game, I think, took it out for some reason. And I'm like, co-op games, I need to see that come back. I need to see like...
Interesting question. If they took that out for the third one, was it less cover shooting in that one?
It was still cover shooty. It's just like...
Okay.
I think it was... Shit, was it? I don't think it was Visceral that worked on it. It might have been. But it was like they went to the third game. I think it was like a forced third game.
That's always rough.
I think it was that with a new studio, but I can't remember that.
Gotcha.
I can't remember it correctly. And it's just like a bunch of like the co-op mechanics that the first two games were built off of weren't in there. So it's like, why? Like,
I mean, I feel like from a design perspective, a lot of the time, if you're having to, if you don't really get much of a choice in what you're working on, and there's like an expectation set, I almost feel like a lot of, designers would rather make the decision of, we want to try something different and see if it works, rather than we want to try and replicate the magic of, whatever the first ones did right, and have people be like, oh, well, it does this, just not as good. That's always been the assumption for me, is that it's to avoid comparison, like unfair comparison, because you're just never going to have, when it comes down to it, design decisions are made by certain people for certain reasons. And if you don't have the people who are involved with the making of that thing, a lot of the time, you might just not understand why certain decisions were made. And it's like, okay, well, if we fundamentally don't understand why this was done, we probably shouldn't do it, and should do something that we like understand better anyway as like designers. That's my thought on it, but that's just me.
Borderlands does something similar. When you're reviving someone, that person can still fire at things. Borderlands might not be the best example in the world because there's no cover shooting, but also like it's also like way more enemies as far as I know, compared to an Army of Two.
Well, the reason I ask about cover shooting specifically is that, in a lot of kind of more cover shooty mechanic based games, or at least things like Gears of War, like early cover shooter games, the enemies tended to be a lot less aggressive in terms of like coming towards you, unless they were like specifically like a guy with a melee weapon. And that's one of the more interesting things about being able to revive people. In particular, like if you have like a wounded system or whatever, is the idea that you going out to revive them is a risk.
Yeah.
If there's a bunch of guys behind cover and your buddy was running between cover to go take some guy out or whatever, you then have to like stand there for 10 seconds being shot at. So it's like, I need to make a strategic move to like, lay suppressing fire or whatever. But if your buddy just goes down behind cover, then you just crouch and revive him, and it's like, so it's always interesting to me to because I feel like the best player mechanics are ones that are tied inherently into the way that the enemies work. Just because if you don't have that synergy, and it's like, I can drag this guy at like 50% speed, but the guys are running at me twice as fast, behind the cover that I'm in or whatever. It's like, okay, then why would we put the design time into that? You know what I mean? So the times that you'll see like dragging and things like that, where it's like, okay, we're expecting you to go down several times in the heat of combat, so enemies are going to kind of stay back and allow you to like heal your buddies or whatever. So it's just like it's fully tied into the design philosophy, and a lot of the time trying to put mechanics together like that aren't designed from the ground up to work together, will actually make the game less fun, which sucks.
I think it also might be an engine.
It's a very lose-lose.
I think it also might be an engine thing. I was looking into it. The first 2 games were built in Unreal 3, and for the third one, they had Visceral. It is Visceral that worked on them. They had the third game switch over to Frostbite 2. So I'm wondering.
Ooh, so it's not the. Oh, you know why? No, you're totally right.
I think just the engine capabilities just did not allow for that kind of interaction.
Well, no, what it was is they probably couldn't use any of what they had from the first or second game because it's not like a if you can speak English and Spanish, you can tell somebody in English what someone in Spanish is saying. Like engine assets don't transfer.
Yeah,
so they probably had to start from scratch.
Conflicts in the code and all that.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, so it's just like if you can't move the content from one engine to another, it's like, all right, well, we have to start from scratch anyway. What do we want to do?
Yeah, I think that'd be a thing that I'd love to see come back. Like going back to the GTFO because that's kind of my hyper fixation at the moment. That's 4 players, and it's recommended you play with other players instead of the bots that it supplies you if you can't fill the slots. So it's like, okay, 1 person can drag somebody back, 2 people can lay down, covering fire would be a cool thing to implement there. But thinking about to like PS3 games to now, a lot of games tried innovation, but then nothing ever followed up on it. Like playing a Ghost Recon Future Soldier. I used to play the multiplayer of that very heavily back in the PS3 days. And that game, had its like squad loadout. You could have like the marksman and like the support with like the heavy machine gun and all that. And that heavy machine gun by default could be mounted like to a wall, like with a directional key. And if you were to fire at somebody behind a wall, because it is a cover shooter, the game would consider you laying down suppressing fire. And on their screen, it would zoom in on them so they couldn't see around the wall and give them like a screen shake to show like, hey, they're being, suppressed by this machine gun fire. And it's just like after that, and after all this whole engine of like gun customization, they were like, "Hey guys, we're making Ghost Recon Wildlands, or whichever one was the first open world one, and we're going to include none of that." It's like, why? You're not even making this one a cover shooter. This one's just a third-person run-around shooting game.
Yeah, it's so interesting the way that like, keeping 90% of I guess what the essence of a game is and changing like one thing, at least in like the kind of concept design phase, just cascades into like a billion things just completely changing, because and that's one of the reasons that I personally prefer a much longer development cycle, not like long like 4+ years or whatever, but longer than a year, for example.
New Call of Duty just came out. We have 1 year for the next one. So rev up that engine, add some new stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's one of the things that's important about a longer development cycle, and it's why I really like to see games getting delays. Not like to see games getting delays, but I like to see that studios are willing to make delays if they need to. Is that there's honestly a lot of stuff that you don't figure out, while you're making a game until you've played it, incessantly for like months and months. And a lot of the time when you're like designing stuff, it's really hard to make sure that you're playing it as well, because if you spend 8 hours working on script or whatever it is that you do in the process of making a game, it's really hard to like get off of work and be like, oh well, I'm gonna play Remnant for 2 hours or whatever and like test out all the stuff that I made. I still do it. Like it's an important part of making any game, but I really wish that
iterating.
Yeah, iteration is like really just very, very essential in the process. And like, I feel like the game is a lot better just because it's kind of, we've been working on it for a couple of years now. It's like a new game every 2 weeks. It's really incredible. Like in a good way. Like I feel like we're just like constantly improving on what's there and making it like more cohesive and stuff like that. And that's not something that I feel like we would have had a liberty to do if it had been like a really short development cycle. The
clickbait title here, game dev shits on Game Freak.
No, it's just like there has to be a middle ground, you know, like you can't expect even these big game companies with like, you know, thousands of employees. It's unrealistic to expect those employees to create a new iteration of Call of Duty in 1 year and have it be, you know, perfectly functional. But then it's also like you have these games that are in forever betas as they keep adding like new stuff, and it almost sometimes fundamentally changes the game itself. And it's like, oh, we're still in beta. But then you have these games that are like, okay, we spent like a year or two in beta, here's our release. And now we're going to start changing stuff. But then you have, what is it, like Star Citizen that's been in development for fucking 8 years now?
Yeah, I wish I was more familiar with that story, but the like Star Citizen, the process of making Star Citizen, I'm curious about it. Like, I'd love to be on a fly on the wall. But the one that always comes to mind for me is Duke Nukem Forever.
Yes.
Oh God.
I am fascinated by Duke Nukem Forever as like a case study in.
It's been overtaken.
Like, yeah.
I think something I saw recently was Beyond Good and Evil 2 has been in development longer than Duke Nukem Forever was.
That's so interesting. I actually have not played Beyond Good and Evil. I need to. I've heard it's like one of those games that I would really like.
I have it in like 3 of my launcher libraries, and I haven't gotten around to playing it yet.
Yeah, I think I played like the first 15 minutes. It seemed interesting. I just like
it's one of those games that people
like
talk about. Kid. It's so weird. It's like one of those games that people talk about, but I haven't personally met anybody who's played it.
Yeah, yeah. The other one that I always think of in that regard is Abe's Odyssey.
Like, oh my God, Abe's Odyssey.
I just picked up a Stranger's Wrath, I think, a while ago, like that. The first-person shooter from that universe. So,
sweet.
I'm trying to get back into like a bunch of boomer shooters. So.
Yeah, love me some boomer shooters.
We were talking about so we've talked about, like, this could be the last thing we talk about since it's already over. But like we were talking about games that truly could have used another month to a month and a half of development time. How do you feel about the latest iteration of Pokemon titles that truly could have used a good month or two of polish?
It's an interesting case for me because I if I'm being perfectly honest, have like zero nostalgia for Pokemon. It's very interesting because I have almost exclusively been like a console person, at least up until I was like a sophomore in college, and you know, when I got a half decent computer and started like playing games on there. You know, so I never really got into like any series that were like mobile. So Pokemon was always kind of something I was adjacent to. I always liked the like designs and things like that, but you know, I can't personally say that I'm like familiar with the ways it's been iterated on over the course of the generations and stuff. My college roommate was actually a competitive Pokemon player, which is why I know so much about it now, and I played a lot of Pokemon Go. But you know, it's really interesting for me because you know, we bought Violet when it came out, and you know, like I said, I don't really have too much personal experience, but my fiance has played every Pokemon game pretty much since they came out. Not like competitively, but she likes them as a series. And I remember she was like so excited for it, and we bought it digitally. We downloaded it, and she started playing it. We got to like the second or third battle, and she had this look on her face, and I'm like, what's wrong, babe? And she's like, where's the stealth?
Stealth.
She had gone into Scarlet and Violet thinking that the stealth mechanics from Legends Arceus were going to come back, and was like disappointed to the point where she ended up refunding it. Not because the game was like busted or anything, that gets patched out, but like because she just didn't feel like playing. Had her expectations set high by Legends, and then like didn't get all of the stuff that she liked from that one, you know, the one 3D game that they've done so far, you know, in the first mainline 3D game. And I remember thinking that that's like such a shame, because, you know, I feel like this was the jump to 3D, right, outside of Legends Arceus. Like there hasn't been one in this format.
Sword and Shield was the mainline. Sword and Shield was the first mainline.
Was it on Switch?
Yeah, it was on Switch.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, but all right. In that case, my argument's kind of screwed. But
It's one of those things where it's like, oh, that mechanic was taken out
yeah,
from
exactly.
a new iteration, despite working in the previous one. Like,
well, from what I understand, that's actually like a way to keep value in the games. Is it's like, oh, if you want a Pokemon that follows you in the Pixel generation, you have to play like Heart Gold or Soul Silver. If you want, this, you have to play Black and White. If you want that, you have to play this. And it's like, I understand wanting to make sure that like the game, the experience for each one of your games is like completely unique and is able to kind of stand on its own regardless of like, how far back in the series it was. But at some point you do have to make changes to a series in order to keep things, fresh and interesting. And I feel like it does a real disservice to, people who are kind of getting into the series for the first time to not at some point you start being held up by the DNA of your own series essentially. So it's like, how much of this core experience do we have to preserve in order to call it a Pokemon game or whatever? So you get into these new iterations and there's things that could theoretically change in a way that would improve the game's experience, but can't because it has to have those things in order to be a Pokemon game essentially.
There is enough change as far as like core mechanic. There is like a stealth mechanic, but it's just kind of tiptoeing in the tall grass and waiting for the Pokemon to move and then tossing a ball from behind them. It's not. I never played Arceus, so I don't know what that mechanic is, but. Yeah. That's as far as I know the hide mechanic.
Yeah, that was one of the really interesting things for me playing, like the bits and pieces of Arceus that I did get to play is that the movement almost felt like Phantom Pain. Like there was like a
really
the
movement in Phantom Pain is fucking weird.
I love it, but it feels like Arceus, doesn't it? Like I don't know if you've played it, but it.
Oh no, I haven't played a Pokemon game since the original Gold and Silver. So
valid. But yeah, I remember like playing the game a little bit and being like, this feels familiar. Why does this feel familiar? But I don't know, the movement system in that game just felt
you just start hearing kids in America now.
Yeah. Oh my god. But yeah, I remember like really being excited about the way the movement felt in that game, and then I'm pretty sure it's just like regular stick movement with no like dodge rolling or anything in Scarlet and Violet.
That is like Sharky was saying, that's a very distinct movement pattern.
The thing is, like, I thought when I sat down to play Phantom Pain the first time, I did the movement. I was like, this feels off because like I had vague memories of 1 and 2. Going back and playing 1 and 2, the game's movement has always been that fucking weird. It's just been less noticeable because of the engines that it's on and the generations it's on, but the movement in the Metal Gear Solid games has always felt so off to me.
Well, I almost feel like that's on purpose because it forces you to be a lot more precise with the movements that you're making if you want to stay in cover, but it does allow you to more easily move the way you would need to move to hide, which I think is actually kind of cool. And I personally am like a I know it was kind of a mess, but I personally really, really like Metal Gear Solid 5. Like 3 is still my favorite, but 5 was the first one that I played because I only had a PS4 at the time. So like that was my first experience with Metal Gear, which is insane. But I'm a huge fan of the series, but it's interesting to me having played that one first because it made the other games I think feel more natural. So when I finished 5 and went back and played, not so much 1, but like 2 in particular, it already felt a little bit closer to what I would expect than what I would, like if it had been kind of more of a modern control scheme and prioritized a little bit, prioritize things a little bit differently in terms of like how you interact with the environments.
And Metal Gear Solid is that game series that did that iteration after iteration correctly by adding a little bit to each game. So
and that said, if you start at 1 and don't play any of the other ones and just play 5, you're like, what the fuck happened here?
Because you're not going to get that.
That's an insane jump.
You're not going to get like the ledge climbing from 2. You're not going to get that open world feel from 3. You're not going to get the weird cinematic moments from 4. It's just like he's always built on something, and 5 does feel like that culmination of this is everything we've learned over our little changes each game. So
yeah, and I remember that was one of the kind of crystallizing moments for me when I was playing through the series for the first time that like really got me interested in the decisions that were being made about how the player interacts with the game specifically. Because I had to skip one because it was driving me crazy. Not having an analog stick was just really driving me insane, and I was playing. I don't have access to Twin Snakes, tragically. So I ended up playing Sons of Liberty like right after I finished 5, and I thought I broke it. I thought I was doing something wrong because Olga was just like shooting the crap out of me, and I kept dying over and over. And I'm like, you have to hold a button to look down the scope? What? And then I thought about it, and I'm like, oh, you have to hold a button to look down the scope. Like, it was just weird to me that that fire was square, and it just threw me for a loop. But I'm like, this is the exact same control scheme. The buttons are just moved around.
Yeah, that is one of those weird things about Metal Gear Solid 1, though, is that it was made for the original controller, not the DualShock. So you're playing this top-down stealth game. And then everything from 2 and on is like, okay, we now have these things called joysticks that can help us figure stuff out.
Man, I like
the invention of fire.
I have so much trouble with D-pad controls. I don't know why. It's just like never quite sat right with my thumbs, but like
I keep forgetting that was a thing that the PlayStation had to put up with. It was like the first like few months of the PlayStation's life, and the first like dozen games that came out only had the D-pad control. And then like, we're putting out this game, here's a new controller to go with it.
Well, that's why you see tank controls so much, is you're limited from a 360 degree range to 4 polar options. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like theoretically there was no way to measure like how far around the D-pad your fingers were or whatever. I think some like modern controllers can do that, but like for the most part it was just digital up, down, left, and right. So there was no like turn, it was just up or right. Yeah. And it's amazing how much inputs. Sorry, I'm like really fascinated by
you're good.
Like player psychology in particular, and the way that like the designer's intent can be like kind of like can drive the player experience in ways that you wouldn't expect. So like, it's pretty much instinct at this point that like one of the shoulder buttons aims your gun and the other one shoots it. But at that point, what do you do with melee? If you have like a game where you have guns and swords or whatever, like Remnant, for example.
Do not make it clicking the control stick.
Oh my god.
I hate that as the melee mechanic. Like, put it on a bumper. If I have to keep clicking that right control stick to melee somebody, I'm going to throw this controller through a window. Like,
yeah, no, for real.
Triangle.
That drives me crazy. But I also don't particularly like it being on the face buttons. I'm at the point where I'm like, I really like, not to toot our own horn or anything, but I really like what Remnant did, where it's like, okay, yeah, you can't hip fire your weapon, but if you fire your gun while you're not aiming or whatever, you just use your melee. Exactly. So it's like, okay, if I want to hit somebody, it's always the same button. You know what I mean? And that frees up the whole rest of the controller to do whatever the hell you need it to. So I don't know. I thought that was a cool choice.
Yeah. Well, anybody else got anything they want to?
Man, I wanted Pokemon and I got Metal Gear Solid. I'm pleasantly surprised.
That's the pipeline of gaming. Everybody starts at Pokemon. Truly. You end up at the Metal Gear Solid franchise eventually.
True.
Hey, everything's a Metal Gear reference. Last controller thing I'm thinking about. Ever since the Game Awards, I've been stuck on thinking about the Armored Core grip. Are y'all familiar?
Oh no! No. Oh no!
When you I've never actually played one except for on a demo disc for the
PlayStation.
That was a PS2
demo.
Oh.
Hey, let's go.
Oh, demo
Y'all
discs.
remember Yo-Noid?
Oh, you guys remember demo discs?
Oh my god, dude. I literally like the PS2, the PlayStation Magazine demo discs are like a big part of the reason I'm a game designer today.
It was a demo disc.
Fun memories of those.
It was a demo disc that gave me my first experience of Soul Reaver. And ever since then, I've been trying to find a functional PC port, which I think they are coming out with, because they delisted Soul Reaver on GOG with an update coming soon tag. So I think they are going to make a functional PC port for that finally.
I don't have any insider information. I will say, like, I should clarify that now, but like, I would personally love to see Soul Reaver remasters. I think that would be cool as fuck.
Soul Reaver remaster. You just put them all on a disc. You have Soul Reaver 1 and 2. You have Legacy of Kain, Defiance, because the first Legacy of Kain is this weird like CRPG almost, and it's like, yeah, just remake that in a different style, and make kind of bring that in line with everything else. But then just give me like the 5-game disc with all of them.
You were asking about the Armored Core grip, and
Yeah.
it's this up here. Yeah, yes, it's this up here.
Why is
You're playing the game like this.
Oh yeah,
Here, we should talk.
is everything in wait, it controls backwards in that?
Yes, it's backwards.
Oh
You're on
my
push to talk,
god.
Fannon.
Yeah, you're on push to talk, so
The insane progression for me was actually, it's my right hand that's relevant, but yeah, you know, it's funny. I played when I played Dark Souls, I mostly played it like this, but I got sick of you know, switching from like the aim stick to the movement stick, and I don't like playing with lock on or whatever. So I was using a Steam controller, but I switched to like the Raptor grip. So I would use this for Estus and dodge. I'd use my thumb and then these two fingers to like hit and do heavy. And then once I got around to Elden Ring, for whatever reason, I started playing like this on the right side of the controller. So thumb, and then no. So I started bending my finger for some reason and brought my like. So I was attacking with my pinky. But from what I understand, because I haven't actually played one, but I have a lot of friends who really like it. You actually play Armored Core with the sticks swapped.
Yeah.
And then you control it like with both of your hands on the controller backwards. And I just the thing about it is apparently the control scheme is so complicated that you have to, like, in order to get the most out of your build and be able to use your like melee weapons and range weapons at once, you need to hold the controller backwards because you need all 5 fingers. And I think that's like the coolest thing that has ever come out of, you're not supposed to use it this way, but yeah, I guess.
Gamers built different.
Love it. Love the innovation.
FromSoft just continues to deliver from like 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Love it. I'm curious to see how like paddles on the back of it, because I know there's a lot of controllers nowadays that have
The Elite like controller for Xbox has like the 2 option.
I always get called a freak for using the Steam controller, but it's the only one I have that has the back paddles, and I love it.
I played one game on my channel with the Steam controller, and it was Half-Life.
That's not a bad choice.
I never wanted to use that controller again in my life after finishing that game.
I will say it's not the greatest thing in the world if you have to use the right joystick. If you don't need the right joystick, it's fantastic. I played Devil May Cry 3 for the first time with a completely customized control scheme on a Steam controller. And it's funny because the thing that got me into it, I love talking about this because it's like an actual like weird accessibility issue with that game specifically. So I have fibromyalgia, right? I'm disabled. I have my card and everything. But one of the main symptoms is that repeated motions, like essentially the stuff that you need to do like quick time events, is really, really painful for me, right? The problem is my thumb, the whole time you're playing, you know, Devil May Cry 3 in particular, you have to mash the gun button to keep your combos up in order to get your like style meter up enough to kill some of, you know, to like get Devil Trigger and kill bosses and things like that. So I actually ended up having to use the Steam controller because it was the only way I could get the turbo to work correctly. So I just started holding down the button with my thumb, and then I'm like, wait, why would I hold this down with my thumb? I'll just put it on the back paddle so I can squeeze the controller to maintain my combo and not like ruin my finger any worse than I have to. And then at that point, I was using my thumb only for melee. So I started switching the other controls around, and by the end, it looked nothing like the original control scheme, but it was just way more physically comfortable for me to play. And being able to use both, these two fingers to maintain combos, I was eventually able to turn the turbo off. I didn't even have to think about my disability at that point. And I think that that's like one of the reasons that the accessibility experience is so important, is being able to like, go from I can't play this game because I'm disabled to I've been able to customize this game so much that I don't even have to think about my disability. That was the thing that made me love Devil May Cry 3.
Yeah, we did an accessibility episode of the podcast, I think with Haley, when we covered like the exorbitant costs of like accessibility tools for like controllers and consoles. I mean, that is its own episode, but like that could be a whole other conversation for another episode to go back over. But it's like to play a game in that kind of setup, you're paying thousands of dollars. And it's just it's absurd. It's almost like it's not helpful. Like it's just
wild.
Yeah,
and that's why that's part of why I'm really excited that the conversations that are happening on Twitter are happening right now, and we actually have like game design discourse in a public setting, is that you can kind of even if it's not native to the game that you're wanting to play, somebody else might have a solution for you. And the thing about it is, the more players talk about this and push for accessibility and really like make it a priority in terms of their like purchasing like decisions and things like that. Like, this game is something that I specifically want to support because I like what they're doing for my friends who like otherwise wouldn't be able to play games. Making sure that conversation is happening will incentivize more studios to like, put in the work and really make sure that their accessibility options are, front and center, and, try and change the conversation around things like gyro aim is the thing I always like to talk about, because so many people take like personal offense to gyro aim. Even being like, hey, do you want to turn this on? Like when you start the game, and it's like, gyro aim is the only way that I'm able to play a shooter on a controller, personally, because my hands shake. So trying to like move intentionally with the thumbsticks is not easy for me at all. So I'll go from being mediocre at a game and not enjoying it that much to being completely cracked when I can just tilt the controller a little bit to like align my crosshairs and just use the stick for bigger movements. And for some reason, a lot of people that I know are like, oh, you like gyro aim? Like, what are you talking about? You have bad opinions. And I'm like, it helps me.
I don't know. What the hell are you talking about?
People get so up in arms about gyro aim in particular, and I don't know why, but it's like, for anybody who has had trouble with shooters on controller, especially if you have like motor disabilities, or like fine movement disabilities, it's life changing. Like it really, really helped me a lot. Getting into, like anything that's a shooter where keyboard and mouse isn't an option, because it's my preferred schema. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're coming about an hour 20 now, so I think now would be a good time to.
The time moves.
The time moves.
We'll just keep talking, so definitely stop me.
And the thing is, like, we love having you here to talk, so I'm pretty sure when the game launches or whenever some new discourse happens, we'll bring you back. So
yeah, no, I mean, like once Remnant 2 drops, you will not be able to get me to shut up about it. So definitely let me know if y'all ever want to like talk about it or stream it or anything.
It's that Tyler the Creator meme of like, unfollow me right now. This is the only thing I'm going to talk about for the next.
I think about that tweet like at least once a week in regards to Remnant 2. I'm so excited.
Cool. Well, thank you for being here this week with us, Fannon. It's always great to have you here on the show. Do you have anything to add, Deca, before we wrap up?
I'm good. If you're looking for Call of the Netherdeep, I'm sorry.
Yeah, holidays.
I work a factory job. The holidays was mostly me recuperating from like my factory job that I have, and I love my factory job.
Deca got a new.
Is it a lot?
Deca got a new job. It's taking some time. We had the holidays. We kind of shut everything down, which is why we haven't had a podcast episode for the last several weeks, or we haven't had, a D&D game up on the other channel, or we haven't had Call of the Netherdeep up on this channel. Everything just kind of stopped for the holidays because of scheduling and all that. But New Year, we'll slowly be getting everything back onto a regular schedule. So it's gonna be nice. But yeah, I think that I think I have nothing else to say. Like Fan said, I could talk about just game stuff for hours. So
I feel that I'm like getting over a cold right now, and it's my first day of work back from Goblin Week. I don't know if I've told you all about Goblin Week, but it's my new favorite time of the year. You
get a week off at the end of the year.
No, I get 2.
Nice. I get a week off from my job at the end of the year, so
I can't tell you how bad I needed that. Like honestly, it's so wild to come. Like today was obviously the like caveman mode, just trying to get anything done kind of day. Like that coming back from break always is or whatever. But it's amazing like how much more energy I have now and how much more excited I am to like do work. Just because I had like a couple of weeks off, but it's a good feeling.
So again, just like big thing, just take time for yourself sometimes if you can.
Hell
like,
yeah.
Enjoy those moments, because by the end of the year, by December every year, if you have just been working on anything, you're going to be burnt out. Just take like a few days to.
You will relax.
You will relax. We are no longer asking.
This is a threat.
But yeah, all right. If you want to take us out, Deca.
Yeah. So as always, we will have Fannon's information down below. Probably the link to where you can pre-order Remnant, I guess.
There is a link. We have a Steam page, I think.
Yeah, there's Steam page. I think I saw one on GOG, I believe too. So, or maybe Epic, one of the two. But there are launchers where you can get Remnant too. So,
yes. And pick up the other Remnant while you're at it. Anyway, and we will have our information at the bottom as well. Sharky, get tiptoeing back into streaming every now and again. So pop in when he's.
If everything on my schedule works out, by the time you all are watching this, I might be streaming that night. These episodes come out on Fridays. I'm trying to get into Friday and Saturday streaming again. So
yeah,
we're currently playing through Yakuza 0, and it is a time sink. So
nice. I mean, if y'all ever want to like do a 3-man on Remnant, definitely let me know.
I love that. I'd love to get back into it. I've uninstalled it now for other stuff, but pretty sure I still have my save file and everything for my character.
Yeah, bet.
I've never played it, so it could be my first time into it.
Hey, we'll be able to like point you towards all the cool stuff.
The content. But yeah, if you like what we're doing, you can always like the video, tell a friend, tell a friend to tell a friend, subscribe. I think the majority of people who engage with our content are still like not subscribed, which is a bonkers phenomenon to me. But hey, that's YouTube for you, I guess. We'll be here in the new year doing things. And this is Without Context for Deca, Sharky, Fannon. We're out.
See you guys later.
Good night.